So today we saw Tesla stock push upwards while simultaneously seeing Ford stock succumb to more downward pressure. Now this is mainly driven from the fundamentals that we recently got from Ford's earnings yesterday, because Ford pretty much issued a major warning about its EV business. For example, Ford mentioned that it expects to produce over 600,000 EVs per year during 2024. The problem is they said that they would produce this many vehicles by the end of 2023 last year, so they're pretty much adjusting their targets. Now the CEOs of Ford said that the transition to EVs is happening. It just may take a little longer. They also said it would be a little slower than the industry expected. And in addition to that, we of course saw that Ford is also losing more billions of dollars in its EV business. And so we're hearing Ford delay their expectations for vehicles manufactured, while at the same time Tesla in the last 2 quarters delivered more vehicles than Ford could even produce. But I also want to point out that typically the first 2 quarters on Tesla tend to be the slower quarters, while Q3 and Q4 are when Tesla tends to deliver more vehicles. But along with an update on the fundamentals, we also got an update on some economic data with the PCE report coming out, which is basically the inflationary gauge that the Federal Reserve prefers to look at. And we see that inflation is still cooling off, although it's still not cooling off at a great rate, but it's still nonetheless showing that it has a downward trend. And so right now, the only reason why we're still seeing a lot of personal spending from a lot of Americans is pretty much because of the robust labor force. In fact, if we pay attention to this chart right over here, we see that excess household savings is pretty much diminishing, right? It's on a straight downward decline from the pandemic money that was given out there, but at the same time, we're seeing credit also kind of get a little bit tighter, but people are still out there spending simply because they still have a job that is actually paying higher wages. But with that said, as I often do on this channel, I want to go ahead and hop into my laptop and kind of just have a further, more detailed discussion on what's currently happening with Tesla, and kind of just cover Tesla from the perspective of a trader in the short term, but also someone who's investing in Tesla in the long term as well. So let's go ahead and hop into my laptop. Alrighty, so we are officially in my laptop taking a look at Tesla stock from a 5-minute time frame, and we see that Tesla stock has pushed up, as I noted earlier. However, I want to highlight something, right? So in yesterday's video, I talked about Tesla stock falling down a tremendous amount, and I said that it wasn't just because of bad catalyst events or bad press with Tesla, because if we actually pay attention, we see that the overall market, right, the S&P 500, or if you look at the NASDAQ, like the QQQs, you'll see that those sold off as well. So it wasn't just because there was bad press for Tesla, there was an underlying reason why the market pretty much capitulated yesterday and sold off a tremendous amount. Now, I didn't say it in yesterday's public video on YouTube simply because I kind of go more into details with the Push and Profit private group, and I kind of explained exactly why with them. And being that it's old news now, I don't mind sharing that publicly on YouTube. Now, I do want to caution you guys that this is going to be a little bit more in depth, and I find that the deeper you go on YouTube to really kind of discuss the markets, the more you kind of lose people, because unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to understand what's going on in the markets. They just kind of want to know, well, is the rocket ship going up or is the rocket ship going down? But unfortunately, to obviously understand where the market's heading, we have to obviously understand what's currently going on, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of simplify this and kind of break down why we saw so much selling, right? Let's go to a daily chart, or actually a 4-hour chart. Let's go ahead and explain why we saw these big red candlesticks for Tesla, right? And so, at the heart of the matter, right, it lies the announcement from the Bank of Japan, right? And I bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and break this down. You might be wondering, what does Japan have to do with Tesla, right? We have to pay attention to geopolitical issues and several other data points. You just can't be oblivious and look at all of the charts on Tesla and just looking at one data point. You have to pay attention to what's going on in the world, the economy, everything, right? It all ties in together, right? The financial markets are much more complex than we tend to give it credit for. And so we had the Bank of Japan suggesting a potential shift in its yield curve controlling policy, right, which would allow rates to exceed the 0.5 ceiling. As expected, this news, created a plummet for the market, and that's what we saw right around over here. You might question again, why should events in Japan impact us, right? And while that sentiment is understandable, it's crucial to recognize that developments in Japan hold significant weight for a variety of reasons. Again, in yesterday's video, I said a lot of the other people that talk about Tesla on YouTube, they're not going to go ahead and explain the real reason why, Tesla stock fell down or why all the markets fell down. They're going to, point to a little headline of, the bad press that Tesla got yesterday. But it wasn't just because of the bad news that Tesla had, on a lot of media outlets. It goes a little bit more deeper than that, right? And so going into what's going on in Japan, or what happened in Japan, right? Well, Japan stands as one of the largest international creditors to the U.S. government, right? And they're actively purchasing U.S. treasuries. And so any adjustments in rates could induce a significant shift in investment strategies, potentially leading to a withdrawal of liquidity from the U.S. markets as a surge in yields, right? And so one of the things I kind of broke down, I told the Push and Profit private group this before, but I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this a couple times on YouTube in older videos, right? But as I previously mentioned, once yields are increased, they tend to exert a downward pressure on U.S. equities, right? So the stock market falls down when yields go up, right? And that's because you're kind of providing investors with a safer destination for their funds, right? Investors then find themselves having to assess whether the risk in investing in stocks warrants the delta, right? The gap between the guaranteed returns from treasuries and the risk associated with potential gains through equities or stocks. So I know this may sound complex to someone who's not, familiar with this, but if you were to take your Series 7 and become a licensed stockbroker, one of the questions that is guaranteed to be on that test, right, is going to be a question that would say, well, what is the most risk-free investment out there, right? And the answer would be treasuries, right? Because it's pretty much guaranteed. Now, I know that's kind of theoretically speaking because, of course, nothing in life is guaranteed, but investing in treasuries from the government is guaranteed a return, right, theoretically, versus investing in a stock, right? Because you can't guarantee what percentage Tesla is going to give you by the end of the year. You just can't do that, right? You could kind of guesstimate, but it's not guaranteed, versus with treasuries, it is guaranteed, right? And so that's why when you have treasuries rise up and you have a guaranteed profit that risk-free, you're going to put your money into something and it's going to give you this risk-free investment return. Well, why hold money in the stock market when you don't know what return it's going to give you, but treasuries are guaranteed, right? So, I just want to cover that, right? So that's something that, I've told the Push and Profit private group. But secondly, the Japanese yen plays a significant role in carry trades, which involves borrowing in one currency to invest in another, right? So this strategy requires several, smoothly functioning variables, but at its simplest form, it might involve using Japanese yen at a rate of 0.5% to purchase US dollars, right? And so you earn a rate of, let's say, 4% from US treasuries, and if all factors remain constant, rate, spot rate, etc., the difference or the delta becomes your earnings, right? And so why does this matter? As carry trades become less appealing, it makes sense to liquidate and close positions, which involves selling off risk assets like stocks where investments might be held, right? And so in essence, the relationship between the Bank of Japan, the Japanese economy, and the US and other world economies is unique, right? And so yesterday's news, even as a mere rumor, sent, just a lot of scare or fear into the market, and that's why we saw not only Tesla fall but the overall markets fall. Now again, I try to keep these discussions really with the Push and Profit private group, because obviously if you're in a group, you're most likely more interested and invested in understanding what's going on in the market versus on YouTube. As I mentioned earlier, the deeper you go on YouTube, the more you kind of lose people, right? And I don't blame them, right? Because when I go on YouTube, I may want to get educated on something, but a lot of times it's entertainment. And so a lot of people that come, to watch my videos on YouTube, they don't want to know what's going on with the markets. They just want to know, like I said earlier, will Tesla stock rocket or will Tesla stock go down? It's simplest form. But again, to understand that, you have to understand what's going on. And so for those of you guys that made it this far in my explanation, I just want to say thank you, because I do like covering these more in detailed topics. I just find that it doesn't really work on YouTube. But anyways, I'm going to stop this rant of sharing information on YouTube and kind of talk about Tesla back again, right? So, back to the fundamentals. We saw Ford, obviously in their earnings, they beat earnings, but as I said in previous videos, it's not just about earnings, right? It's always also about forward guidance, and that's why we saw Tesla stock fall down. Tesla stock beat its earnings, but we heard in the earnings call Elon Musk mention that, of course, hey, going into Q3, we may see, production stifle because we're going to be updating our global facilities and our factories to, add more gigapresses. And while this is bullish long term, right, if you hear a company saying, hey, we're actually upgrading and we're going to install more machinery to produce more vehicles to reach our goals that we set, that's actually bullish. But one of the things that is, sad when it comes to Wall Street is that they're very myopic, right? They're very short-sighted, and they look at things quarter over quarter. And so that's how they view Tesla stock. So as a, Wall Street analyst or, a lot of these institutional investors, they hear Elon Musk saying, hey, Q3 production is going to kind of stifle, yada, yada. Wall Street in their ears, they're like, oh, no, this is bad. And so there's a lot of selling pressure with Tesla. Right? And so that's why, Tesla fell down. But also, one of the things I've told the Push and Profit private group is that even, not only just the fundamentals and geopolitical issues, but also from a technical aspect, we were overextended, right? We saw Tesla stock from a technical standpoint also get rejected multiple times. And we see that Tesla, pretty much fell down. If we take a look at the QQQs, we see that, we're pretty much overextended. I know, there's a lot of euphoria in the market. Pretty much from the beginning of this year, we rallied up. It's been a complete rocket ship in comparison to last year, which felt, like a lot of pain. It was really painful for especially a long-term investor to go through all this, right? And so one of the things I want to highlight is kind of my perspective on Tesla from a long-term investor and also from a short-term trader, right? I invest in Tesla in my long-term portfolio, right? I mostly invest in index funds. I'm a very boring investor, but I also have, exposure to individual stocks like Tesla, right? And I'm going to go ahead and explain why. But also, I trade in a separate trading account where I trade Tesla in the short term and try to profit off the fluctuations of price in the, going up and down, right? In the short term. So in the long term, I'm bullish on Tesla. Why am I bullish on Tesla despite, things looking kind of overextended over here? Well, that's the thing. As a long-term investor, none of this matters, right? You have to kind of look at things from a longer perspective. And so what are we seeing fundamentally from a lot of these legacy automakers? Well, we're seeing that they're kind of not even being able to deliver on their promises. We're hearing Ford say, oh, yeah, last year, yeah, we said we could do this, but we're going to have to kind of push that later. Oh, and by the way, we're actually losing more money in EVs. So, again, that kind of shows us that, Tesla is still in the lead when it comes to the EV space, right? A lot of people try to say that, oh, Tesla has the EV market share or the majority of the market share, but once these legacy automakers come, Tesla's going to lose, But the thing is, like, Tesla's already profitable and they're just trying to work on scale. These EV, or these other legacy automakers trying to get into EVs, they're so far behind. They can't even produce what Tesla's delivering in 2 quarters. And so that's why I'm bullish on Tesla in the long term. And you guys should not invest in Tesla in the long term simply because I'm invested in Tesla in the long term. You should only trade or invest in whatever you see value. And I have to stress that out because, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people who, they hear something on the internet and they blindly copy something without understanding the underlying reasoning, right? So, I have my reasons why I'm invested in Tesla, and I just told them to you. But, of course, if you see value in that, then, of course, maybe you should invest long term as well. But if you disagree, then, of course, maybe you shouldn't invest in Tesla long term, right? You should always do your due diligence, and you should obviously, invest at your own risk, right? It's sad that I have to say that, but, I do have to say that. Now, as far as Tesla in the short term, right, one of the things that I've been saying is, hey, looking at like the technical aspect at the volume profile, I talk about it a lot in my videos. I say this to the Push and Profit private group, that when there's a lot of volume by price, that means that we're going to see consolidation in the price action, right? When there's little volume by price, that's where we see big moves up or down, depending on the direction, if there's buying pressure or selling pressure. And so I've said, hey, I want to watch to see if Tesla comes down to this early or like low $200 levels. Is it guaranteed that Tesla's going to touch these levels? No, it's not guaranteed, right? We could obviously have more positive news, like, other legacy automakers just giving up, or, anything could happen and we could see Tesla go up. I don't have a crystal ball. But what I do know is that we have this descending trend line and we are overextended. And so there could be a possibility that Tesla continues falling down despite even having a green day like today. And so if that's the case, I like to look at things from a bullish perspective and a bearish perspective, right? And so if a bullish perspective, in a bullish perspective, if Tesla breaks above this trend line, cool, that's great. We'll go ahead and you'll see that as confirmation and we'll add more to Tesla in my long-term portfolio. Now, the bearish perspective, well, if Tesla falls down to this $200 level, well, I want to see, does it hold up around this level, right? And if it does, is it going to show confirmation by bouncing up and kind of, confirming that the trend is going to go back upwards? If so, I'll add more into my long-term portfolio for Tesla. Now, if that doesn't happen, we see Tesla touch this area over here, right? And it breaks below it. Well, then, we could possibly see Tesla fall down even lower, right? It's just, theories and hypotheses of what could, happen with Tesla. And I like to have a game plan. It's very simple. We'll see if it breaks up. We'll see if it comes down. But I like to create these scenarios because I don't want to be just oblivious and being, a perma bear or a perma bull, right? There's cyclical times in the market where things shift up and down. And one of the risks I've explained is that, hey, interest rates for auto loans are very high. And although Tesla is kind of still being able to stir up demand by offering, auto loans for, I believe, like 84 months, right? That's good on Tesla's part, but it's still like a recessionary signal, obviously from a macroeconomic perspective that, hey, if companies have to, offer 84-year loans for cars, what does that tell you? It's kind of expensive to buy a car, and the only way to lure people in is by, making these long auto loans. I mean, come on, that's almost unheard of, almost like 8 years for a vehicle to pay off, it's not good. That's not a good sign of the economy. But, at the end of the day, I like to keep it very simple when it comes to trading or investing. No need to complicate things, although sometimes some of the topics I do talk about may be a little bit complicated. But, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it provided some utility. If you guys want to be a part of the Push and Profit program and have access to the private group where I have, or I go over more details and certain things, it's going to be the first link in the description below. Of course, you don't have to check out that link. You could always just, watch these videos on YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And with that said, I'll see you guys on this next video right over here. Hope you had, messed up. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys on this next video. Take care.